Welcome to a special emergency podcast here on the Basketball Zone Cowbell Kingdom YouTube channel. I'm your host, Leo Bias, and today we brought back the co-host, my boy Ty. How you feeling, bro? How you doing? The Chiefs just made a big-time moves in acquiring Le'Veon Bell, which, as a Raider fan, is not a good thing. But Dots, how's your day going, man?
I'm doing well, man. I know there's been a lot going on. I'm not too mad about Le'Veon Bell going to the Chiefs. He's on my fantasy team, so we'll
Uh-oh.
see how it works out.
You already picked him up, huh? That's crazy talk. So on today's agenda, we are going over the huge topic, which is Daryl Morey stepping down. That was breaking news earlier today from Woj, dropping the Woj bomb. And obviously, the first thing that came to my mind was like, okay, they don't have a head coach yet. They're going to need a new GM. The Rockets must trade James Harden, especially with Ty Lue going to the Clippers and not the Rockets. That was a surprising move because leading up from Monday till today, it seemed like he was going to go to the Rockets. But the idea of James Harden playing in a different system, it's kind of weird, even for the casual fan, because we're so accustomed to seeing this guy dribble, 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 and just control the entire offense. But to imagine him playing in a different style where he has to cut, move without the ball, that's a little bit different. And I think that kind of scared off Ty Lue, especially knowing that, okay, well, on the Clippers, I got PG and Kawhi, and on the Rockets, I have James Harden and then very old, overrated Russell Westbrook. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think something we got to see these last few years is the full transition into small ball, right? Houston was like gradually doing it, and then as soon as they get rid of Capella, they're just kind of stuck in that position. So to kind of see them fully commit to that, I don't know if you saw, like, I guess Austin Rivers went on Instagram Live and was talking about how in the Lakers series, like, he was having to guard like AD and switches and things like that. So that was really interesting in itself. I think particularly about this season though, and seeing how well the Rockets were playing early on in the season, and kind of seeing them just slowly and like gradually start regressing. It was kind of sad to see, but I think everybody knew. Kobe even called it, right. That type of system, that type of offense doesn't win championships. When you have Harden at the top isolating and the whole defense has time to focus on you. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's probably one of the best ISO players we've ever seen in the game, and his step back is completely unstoppable. But at the same time, it's a team sport, right? And so ultimately,
Winning the championship. I mean, they were one game away from beating the best team to ever be assembled in the Golden State Warriors. Any other year, that Rockets team would have been champions. And even though I'm a Kings fan, you're a Kings fan, that Kings team, as much as I love that 0-2 team, I think this Rockets team that lost in Game 7 would have been that Kings team. Like, this Rockets team is historically great, and it's just unfortunate that they ran into a oil machine like a KD, Steph, and Clay and Draymond type team, right?
yeah, no, I completely agree. I really liked what Houston was able to do. That was that the first year they had CP, right? That was the year that they went almost beat Golden State, and so kind of seeing CP go down, it was really weird to see that following year, right, when they had that
Mm-hmm.
exit, and kind of seeing that locker room issue between CP and James Harden. I wish they could have made it work,
Yep.
considering how much. Because let's be honest, as soon as Houston traded Chris Paul, everyone just figured he was washed. He was done, right? Miami didn't want to take on that contract, and so what he was able to do this season, kind of resurrecting his career, just kind of goes to show that it would have been nice to see Houston run it back one more time, even with that early exit playoff. So yeah, there's just a lot to kind of see with that. But moving forward, especially seeing the way that Westbrook kind of played alongside Harden in the bubble, I don't know if that's the duo to get it done. And just like you mentioned, especially with Daryl Morey sitting down, stepping down, it's where I'm excited to see where James Harden goes. He's one of, for me personally, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I like watching him in the ISO sometimes. Sometimes
Me too. Yeah.
it gets over the top, right? But I think what a lot of people don't understand is like for this guy to make it look like he's playing pickup basketball against the best players in the world, right?
Right.
And everyone knows what he's going to do. Like, think about it. Teams are literally game planning. They would have all this film on him, and he's still able to execute and things like that, which is crazy. I don't know if you saw, I think in the Phoenix game, right? Ricky Rubio was guarding him backwards, right? In that weird to guard the step back. So, a lot of people can argue that he's bending the rules and things like that, but at the same time, everybody has access to that. So why is everybody not doing it? So that's how I feel about it.
That's a great point, and I've brought that up on previous shows too. Everybody now is trying to emulate James Harden and trying to take a page out of his book because he is good enough, skilled enough to really manipulate the skills, the loopholes that we have in our system, just like any other, just like in the U.S., like even our own actual system, we have so many loopholes, and this guy has been the master of deception. And even though sometimes, as you said, you hate watching it, you love it at the same time because he's so shifty, he's so skilled, and you have to give him his props because there have been teams that have picked him up as soon as he crosses that half court line, and yet he still puts up big time numbers, and he always gives his team a chance to win. But with that said, huge shout out to Daryl Morey. He's really changed the game of basketball on so many levels. I thought he did a great job. He fell short. Again, unfortunate that he lost to that team. He wasn't out there missing 18 straight shots, right, or 17 straight shots against the Warriors in that Game 7. Shout out to Trevor Ariza, by the way. But no, seriously, it was hard to watch that game. I remember like if it was yesterday. But Daryl Morey, you got to give him his props. Now, as Kings reporters, Kings fans, we now have a disciple of him, and hopefully he brings a lot of the good from that system, from those ideologies, and maybe he applies them here in Sacramento, and then the Kings could have a nice team in the near future. That's the main word. But I also want to talk about potential trades because I think they're in the position where I don't think it makes sense to pay Harden and Russell Westbrook $40 million apiece, 35 to 42 million apiece in the next 2 years, and then they have a player option. But and I asked you to come up with some juicy trade proposals, I want to react to them. I have yet to hear about them, so you'll get my raw reaction, and then we'll discuss those trades. So let's get into that.
Cool. So I did a little bit of research. So I have four trade proposals. The first two are going to be the ones I found online. And then the last two are just going to be kind of like my personal opinions, just trying to be like a fun NBA fan, right? So the first one, I think this one's kind of ruled out. We don't have to spend too much time on it, but this was during when D'Antoni was a big potential candidate for the head coaching job. So Ben Simmons, Josh Richardson, and picks to Houston for James Harden. I don't really see that happening now with Doc Rivers there. What are your immediate thoughts on that?
I mean, that's not a bad deal for the Rockets. Honestly, you're getting a top 20 player in Ben Simmons. Then you're getting a nice ancillary piece in Josh Richardson. And if you get enough picks, which they gave up to get all these players, right? The Russell Westbrooks, and then what's his name? The guy from the Timberwolves. What's his name? I'm slipping on his name right now.
Are you talking about their draft pick last year, Jarrett Culver?
No, they're the Rockets guy that they traded for, that they gave up a
Who?
lot. The small forward. God, I'm like slipping on his name, bro. But yeah, I know who I'm. Huh?
Covington, right?
Covington, yeah, I was referring to Covington. So they gave up a lot of draft picks for a lot of these players. So I think that idea of getting draft picks, some flexibility, and a real good basketball player in Ben Simmons, I wouldn't be mad at that. So what's your next one?
Next, I don't know how you're gonna feel about this one, Leo. The Bucks take a swing at James Harden. We've got the Rockets receiving Jarrett Culver, DiVincenzo, DJ Wilson, James Johnson, and 3 future first-round picks. The third team's going to be Minnesota, obviously, so they give up Jarrett Culver and they get Chris Middleton. And Houston decides to get James Harden. What are your thoughts on that?
So you're saying Harden will team up with Giannis and Middleton, or was Middleton part of that trade?
Middleton's gone, so it'd be basically Harden replacing Middleton, be Harden and Giannis.
I mean, that's a championship. Okay, so the Bucks do that in a heartbeat, right? That's Middleton, DiVincenzo, a bunch of picks, whatever, right? Yeah. I'd throw Bledsoe, Middleton. I would throw in everybody, honestly. Like, if you can pair James Harden and Giannis, a 2-time MVP, That's a championship waiting to happen. Teams are going to want to go there, even though it's Milwaukee. Again, shout out to the people in Milwaukee that listen to the show. No disrespect to you guys, but it's a small market. It's really effing cold out there. And, but at the same time, Coach Bud, as much as I don't like him in the playoffs, he's a great regular season head coach. And that would be an all-time type duo. But if you're the Rockets, now let me flip it on you. Do you make that trade?
I personally wouldn't. I don't think the compensation's there enough. Like, just to kind of like recite, like, right, Jared Culver hasn't really proven too much. He's young, definitely has a lot of upside. DiVincenzo, I guess mid-tier role player. I personally liked him a lot at Villanova, but his ceiling's pretty low in my opinion. And then the rest of that,
Wait,
like DJ,
isn't Jared Culver on the Timberwolves?
yeah. So it's a three team trade.
Okay.
So yeah, Chris Middleton would end up going to Minnesota.
To who? Oh shoot, no, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Rockets, I don't do that. That's a dream scenario type thing for the Bucks for sure. But yeah, man, I mean, like you said, there's just no way I pull that trigger. I like that first one better for the Rockets, right?
For sure.
So what's the next trade?
All right, here we go. So these are ones that I just kind of made as being a fan. We all got to see in the bubble. One of the best point guards in the league right now. What time is it? It is Dame time.
Uh-oh.
Portland Trail Blazers blow it up, and they decide to get James Harden, and they give up C.J. McCollum, Anthony Simons, and Gary Trent. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's not blowing it up. That's interesting. James Harden and Damian Lillard in Portland, huh?
Because if you look at it now, right, what they're trying to emulate in Houston, let's be honest, Damian Lillard is a huge upgrade to Russell Westbrook. Damian Lillard hit those shots. You know what I mean? So I don't know if you kind of.
Okay, so just some context between my hate and my objective opinion on Russell Westbrook, and we'll do a whole show on my top 20 players of the NBA, right? Which I don't know if you've seen my graphic yet, but he didn't make my top 20, and it's not a disrespect because I feel like there's 22 better players than Russell Westbrook right now, and that's not saying I'm not basing it off of one season. I'm basing that off of stats this season. I'm basing it off of what they can potentially be, right? Like Jamal Murray didn't even make my top 20. That's how competitive and that's how many great players we have in today's NBA where you're like, oh my gosh, like Russell Westbrook is not in my top 20. It's like, no, like there are other players that I would choose over Russell Westbrook. I mean, he's going on 32 years old in November, and he's coming off a huge injury, and he can't shoot. That's a recipe for disaster, especially at $40 million. Like if he was Chris Paul, who has a beautiful jump shot, who is a great passer, it'd be a little bit different, but he's not. So that's how I felt about Westbrook. Now, yeah, God, I mean, come on, Damian Lillard and James Harden in the same backcourt. To me, Dame Dalla is a top 8 player. I have him at 6 right now. And if you combine 2 top 10 players like that, I think everything else will take care of itself. And that kind of takes off the pressure from a leadership standpoint with James Harden. And obviously, Dame's a great leader. And I just think that would work, man. And that would be next level. I would love for that to happen. Now, you're saying CJ would go to Portland, right? Sorry, to Houston.
Yeah, CJ.
Yeah, I mean,
Anthony Simons, Gary Trent.
Jeez. I would definitely consider that, especially if the idea is to blow it up and then you go out and you hope and pray that somebody can take on Russell Westbrook and you just start fresh, man. Like that's something that I would consider for sure.
And I think both sides, if you look at Houston, CJ McCollum, definitely a solid 2 guard, and then Gary Trent showed a lot of promise in the bubble. I was kind of disappointed. He was a Sacramento King, and then we just dropped him off to Portland. I saw a lot of potential in him in Duke, watched him a lot in high school, and so I wish Kings could have. I would love
crazy that they chose the wrong Dookie that night. Oh, man.
Alrighty, so coming up on the last trade.
Okay.
This one is definitely more NBA fanny, I guess. So be prepared for this. Danny Ainge does it once again. He gives up Kemba Walker and Jaylen Brown, gets James Harden in return. Hold on. Let me give you more context.
Okay.
It's a 3-team trade. So it's going to be Boston, Houston, and New York.
Okay.
So Houston unloads the contracts of James Harden and Russell Westbrook. and they receive Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, Enselinka, and Julius Randle. And then the New York Knicks end up taking on Russell Westbrook, and the Celtics end up getting James Harden and Alfred.
Wow. Wow, that's actually not that bad. Wow. So now you're pairing Jason Tatum, James Harden, and who else would be left?
I guess, I mean, they get Peyton in the trade. I'm assuming he would have to start. And then who else is even on that roster? Like Robert
Okay, so
Williams.
essentially you have a two. So now you have a two-headed monster, right? And Tatum and Harden. So those are the real
Mhm.
pieces. And then over here in Houston, you would get, um, you said who?
Kemba,
Okay, Kemba.
Kemba, Jaylen Brown, Enselinka, and Julius Randle. So these aren't bad
Oh,
guys, you
that's
know what I
not
mean?
bad. That's not bad. Oh my gosh. I'm pulling that. And then the Knicks get their star, their attraction.
Exactly. I saw so many reports about them wanting to take on a big contract, whether it was CP3 or Russell. So I just said, forget it. I'm sorry, Knicks fans, but you guys wanted a big time star. You got one.
Okay, let's make that happen, y'all. I think that'd be great. The Rockets would get all stars in return and a fresh start to whoever takes over that program over there. I don't see why that wouldn't want like why wouldn't the Rockets make that trade happen? And then for the Celtics, if you want to get over the hump and you believe in James Harden, why wouldn't you make that happen, right? Then you just
Mhm.
fill in the pieces with other players. Maybe you get better defensive players. You still have Marcus Smart, right?
Yeah,
On that
still Marcus Smart.
roster. You go out and you try to get a big. As I was saying earlier on CK and how I got mad about Miles Turner and his $18 million a year contract, I've always been under the impression or under the philosophy that you can always get a serviceable big man for cheap. Like those
Mhm.
guys are out there, and to me, Miles Turner is a great backup on a good team. And
Mhm.
I feel like you can get guys like Alex Len who are serviceable for like $5 million, $6 million a year. So when people say or try to justify $18 million for a center who isn't really that good, I'm like, why would I want to take on that guy? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, if you were talking about a Jeremy Grant who was a wing, and wings are premiums in the NBA at say 16 million, I would take that 10 out of 10 times. A guard like a bogey at 15 to 17, I would take that 10 out of 10 times because those guys affect the game on so many levels. Like bigs, there's a bunch of guys that can just fill in that role. Guards and wings are a top priority, and I want to really nudge that in the heads of Kings fans and most NBA fans. But if you talk to any Pacer fan, if you talk to the reporters, they'll tell you the same thing that I've seen from Miles Turner. The guy is soft. Like
Yep.
like this dude is soft. And his 3-point percentage is extremely overrated because you have to put context to that percentage. Like if you watch him play, how many air balls has he not shot from beyond the arc? Like that's what I'm saying. Same with Deadman. I got full with the analytics and I was like, man, he makes perfect sense. He's going to be a great fit. But when you actually watch this robotic human being move, you're like, I just can't just base things off of stats and analytics. We have to compare the film and supplement that with the numbers. Now, if you take that approach, I'm 1,000% behind it. But if you just look at numbers without any context, without actually watching these dudes play, you're like, whoa. Let's put a stop to that, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, especially in terms of Miles Turner. I've seen a couple of like TikTok and things like that that break down his film, and he's one of those bigs that just are never in the paint.
He's
He's
average.
always pick and popping. The roles open a majority of the time. He decides to stay at the top of the key. It's just not productive. And same with Dwayne Dedman. I thought that he could offer maybe a little bit outside shooting, but just kind of seeing in that Kings environment and not being able to run with Fox and things like that, it just didn't work out. And I'm surprised that Atlanta was willing to take him back considering his performance. And I don't even think he's been doing well there.
Facts.
So, yeah, just like you
Facts.
mentioned, there's a lot of serviceable big man on the market. I think surprisingly, Dwight Howard right now has a big market. And then you have to consider like other bigs like JaVale McGee. These are type of guys that are athletic and block shots, rebound. And, you don't need them to have 15 points a night. A solid like, 8 to 10 points a night with 10 rebounds. All you need is a walking double double.
Exactly. And I brought that point up today because I posted that graphic of Christian Wood, who after the I think the All-Star break or after they traded, after the All Star break, after they traded Andre Drummond, the dude was averaging 20-39, and that's something that Miles Turner has never done in his life, not even
Mm.
for a week. So I get it. It's a short term, small sample size from Wood, but I tell you what, at 9 million, like if that's his market, how can I justify 18 for a guy who's not even better than Wood now? Like,
Yeah.
that just doesn't make sense. And someone in the comments just said it best. He's a Willie Cauley-Stein with a slightly better jumper. Like, that's what he is. Like, both dudes are soft. And no disrespect, I feel like Willie and Miles would be a great backup on a great team. Say the Warriors. If they had the Splash Brothers in their entire team. Say the Lakers. See, those teams that are just already set to be really good, these guys can like raise their ceiling, but they're not floor raisers by any means. So I can't justify $18 million for an average big man who, in hindsight, is 24, 25. But the reality is that he's never going to be an all-star. So for someone that's holding hope and saying, you know what, he's going to be an all-star, it's like, no, he's not going to be that. But yeah, that's how I feel about that. And as you said, I think Dwight, after this season, he's gonna have some teams that'll look at him. Again, I think we pretty much covered all these potential trades, right, for James Harden. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we just kind of go over all the big news that has happened since our last live, which was on Tuesday?
Yeah, for sure. I think the last note I'm going to say is for organizations that aren't willing to take that next step and kind of make that move to get over the hump. I remember last summer when the whole PG thing was going down. The Thunder offered Russell Westbrook and Paul George for like Van Vliet, Siakam, and like 1 million draft picks. And I'm not saying that would have gotten Toronto over, but kind of seeing an organization like that, and let's be honest, I don't see the Six returning to the finals anytime soon, especially with the East growing. And so, especially with the trade proposals that are offered, whether it's Portland getting Harden or Giannis getting Harden, not Giannis, Milwaukee getting Harden, right. I think it's important for teams to understand that sometimes you have to sell your future to win now. Because if being honest, having a mid-tier first round pick, what's it going to turn into, right? After lottery 15 to 22, like that's virtually nothing. I mean, there's obviously diamonds in the rough, and if you're able to finesse kind of like how San Antonio has with like Kawhi and things like that, more power to you. But at the end of the day, I feel like there's just some moves you've got to make to put your team over, and let's just be real. There's no time for waiting. You've got to win now.
Well, the Lakers did that. They gave up a lot to get AD, and hey, turned out to be an NBA championship. And I think you take that 10 out of 10 times, right?
Exactly.
So one of the first things that we heard today was the Heat are preparing to go all in on Giannis in 2021. Then we heard maybe an hour later the Dallas Mavericks are preparing to go all in on Giannis in 2021. Okay, so we got two potential suitors. We kind of went over Giannis in Milwaukee. Sorry, in Miami. Dallas is super interesting, right? You put him next to Luka, and then you put him next to KP. That is an insane, monstrous type trio that I don't even know how it would work on the floor, but on paper, it just seems like it's unfair on so many levels, right? Defensively, and then even offensively, because KP can be outside just shanking you with threes, and then Luka's Luka, and then you got this dude just terrorizing you inside. That's just unfair to me. And then so those are some of the news. Daryl Morey stepping down, Ty Lue getting hired. Then the Warriors expected to pursue Dwight Howard. The Bucks very interested in Bogdan Bogdanovic. And I've talked about this on previous podcasts as well. He'd be the perfect fit and a nice replacement for Malcolm Brogdon on that type of role that he was coming in, being a ball handler, playmaker, and still score. I think Bogey with Giannis would be pretty nice as well. AD plans to opt out of his player option, but to re-sign with the Lakers. There's still, I don't think there's any news yet about how long. I think what makes sense for him is to do like the one-on-ones like KD did with the Warriors. And then Rajon Rondo expected to opt out of his player option to become an unrestricted free agent. Caldwell Pope also will opt out to become a free agent. Jeremy Grant will opt out and become a free agent. that guy's gonna get a lot of offers because his defensive versatility, his length, his size. Again, those are all premiums in the NBA. Also, the Lakers are laughing when the Clippers lost a 3-1 lead. I thought that was funny. I just want to
Yeah.
add that in there. But out of all those things that you just heard, did anything stand out to you?
I think the Jeremy Grant thing is pretty interesting, right? So we got to see him definitely evolve in the playoffs. Another Kings potential player, Michael
Mm-hmm.
Porter, right? He really blossomed and
Mm-hmm.
evolved and able to increase his scoring percentage and things like that. So ultimately, I'm curious if Denver decides to, give him big money, considering they have a young guy on the rise, right? Because if we're being honest, I don't think that Michael Porter gets the same opportunities as he does if they bring Jeremy Grant back and now he's the fourth option, and knowing Michael Porter, he's gonna start complaining to the media and his stock's gonna go down. So I think that's pretty interesting to see. Just like you mentioned, the Jared Dudley thing was absolutely hilarious. I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, like the Lakers ducked the Clippers," but I mean, you're preparing for the Clippers. Like nobody expected Jamal Murray to go Super Saiyan and decide to make every single shot, which was insane. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that Ty Lue can really bring that Clippers team together, just like you mentioned, right? Got hired to a 5-year contract, used to, coaching LeBron and Kyrie. So hopefully he's able to mend that relationship, whether it's between, PG and the rest of the locker room or whatever that is. And I think kind of, I guess, a random question now. I know it's been a big debate. What are your thoughts on Russell Westbrook versus Paul George? Who would you rather have on your team?
Oh, Paul George is in a heartbeat. I mean, we're talking about Paul George being a top 15 player, top 10 player, and then Russell Westbrook. Again, to me, he's not even top 20 anymore. I don't even think that's just a debate. That should end right now if that's ever a debate. Because even though Paul George wasn't great in the playoffs and he hasn't been the past 3 years, I mean, during the regular season, he's a monster, and so
Yeah.
is Russell to a certain extent. But Russell Westbrook, I just feel like his shooting numbers just took such a huge dip this year, and the fact that he got injured towards the latter end of the year, and he was injured before he even entered the bubble, it just tells you that that age is catching up to him, and that if he's not that premium athlete, that super freak athletic freak, then what is he really? Well, Paul
Yeah.
George, even with the broken leg and him coming off that huge nasty injury, like he's so skilled. He can dribble, he can play make. At his size, he's a great defender. I just think there's just no debate there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I personally would rather have Paul George and Russell Westbrook. The reason why I brought this up because I've seen it on social media a lot. I was watching the topic on the jump, and Kendrick Perkins actually sided with Russell Westbrook and talked about his
Kendrick
history,
Perkins is an idiot.
right?
Kendrick Perkins is
Um,
an idiot. He's there to just create clicks and just
yeah,
anger fans and just say, Kendrick Perkins, you're an idiot. So obviously you still get paid so people can say you're an idiot, like Skip Bayless. You know what I'm saying? So it's not a
yeah.
surprise that he said that and that he sided with him.
I just think that he brought up some good points about Russell Westbrook, right? Former MVP, multiple scoring titles, and so these are things that we forget, right? Seeing how bad Russell Westbrook been playing. Don't get me wrong, I'm completely on your side with how Russell Westbrook has been this offseason. I mean, not this
But
offseason, but
but
this past
he's
season.
he's been a black hole his entire career in the playoffs,
Mhm.
which is the major reason why KD left his ass. There's no secret to that. Like you just can't win with Russell being your one or your two. He needs to be your number three. Now if he goes to the Lakers, say, and he's a number three option, well that changes things. And that's the context that people need to understand. Like, I'm not saying he's a bad player by any means. All I'm saying is that he's not worth $40 million and that he should not be your one or your two. But if you're saying he's your three, now you got a pretty damn good team, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. I just think at the same time we can't give Paul George too much credit. He's hasn't done anything in the playoffs, and
That's
especially
fair.
after this past playoffs. Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
the backboard Leo.
I
Come
get
on,
it.
we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
shred it.
I get it. Like, I can't defend him. I can't defend him. He said he was going through a lot of mental issues being in the bubble. Again, so many things affected the Clippers that they didn't see coming, right? And those are things that you can prepare for, which is why, again, you have to approach the season the same way LeBron and AD did, which is playing heavy minutes, creating that cohesiveness, that team camaraderie throughout the year. And these guys really thought, hey, I'm just gonna turn on the playoffs. A pandemic happened, and that team really got screwed. And I felt bad to a certain extent, but at the same time, I don't because they should have been smarter and they should have taken it a lot more serious. On a different note, too, some of the news some of the news that I forgot was Dave Yeager accepted a job with Doc Rivers as his lead assistant. Huge shout out to my boy Dave Yeager, man. Good friend of mine. I wish him none but the best over there. That's a hell of a coaching staff, by the way. And then for a third time, the NBA and the NBAPA agreed to extend deadline to serve a notice on terminating the collective bargaining agreement. Extension goes to October 30th now, which allows additional time for talks on the CBA modifications, which I think will be productive. And it's a big thing because we don't know when the NBA will start. There's rumors of January, there's rumors of March, April. I feel like the NBA will wait if the doctors from the government say, hey, we'll have fans. So they'll wait till March, April. But if they say we don't think there'll be fans in the next year, then I think they'll start in January.
Yeah.
Did any of that surprise you at all?
I think the only thing would be, I guess, comparing it to the NFL right now, right? The NFL is not in a bubble. We're seeing all these cases, we're seeing all these postponed games. So I think the NBA is going to definitely look at that and kind of seeing how they're able to construct something that's a little bit more efficient. Obviously, in a regular season with multiple teams, there's no way we can make re-emulate the bubble, right? So just like you mentioned, it depends really on the status of COVID-19 and seeing where we're at. But in all honesty, I think Adam Silver has it under control. I think he's obviously proven in his time in the NBA that he's able to figure things out. So hopefully we can see NBA sooner than later.
Absolutely, man. We're at the 30-minute mark. That's going to do it, y'all. Hopefully, you guys can drop a review on iTunes. It helps us out a lot, guys, just to circulate in our algorithms on the top charts for sports podcasts. Again, we want to make this podcast more than just a Kings podcast, but just generalize it for the NBA. Get some good guests on here in the very near future. I'll work on that as well. Talk about the NFL, talk about the culture that we're living in, business stuff, anything that can help you guys out. Make this podcast as entertaining as possible. It's time to take the next step for us, and I think we're on the right track. And I appreciate you, Ty, for coming on, spending some time with us, man. I'll get this out. It'll be available on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere where you get your podcasts. Thank you guys so much. And on behalf of the entire CK team, we thank you guys, and we'll see you guys on the next one.